Hey guys, so in this video we're going to get into the drum rack basics, all right? So what we're doing here is we're in our instruments section. Let me undo that. And we're just going to drag in our drum rack. This right here is already named, but you want to make sure that it's a MIDI track, obviously, because this is a MIDI instrument, and drag it right in. So this here is the drum rack instrument, and basically it's made up of 128 pads, all right? And what it's displaying here are 16 of those. To scroll through those pads, over here on the left, you can move down and up through the 128 different pads, right? And as you can see here, each pad represents a certain note on a keyboard. So that's how you kind of know where the locator is. If you want an easier way to approach where a sample is going, what you can do, I'm just using my QWERTY keyboard, and the top two rows of your QWERTY keyboard represent kind of a piano roll. So if you notice over here, which might be a little tricky to see, as I hit a note, you'll see a yellow dot pop up here. And there we go. That's the yellow dot. So if I come up here, I can see that my A note is hitting C3. And then my W note is hitting C3 sharp, and the S is the next. And is it E? Yeah, and then E, and then to the D, F, T, G, and I think Y is the next one, and so forth. So you could figure out what represents the second row of letters represent the white keys, and the top row represents the black keys in the appropriate spot. So if I'm wanting to put a sample on my A key here, right, then what we're going to want to do is pull in a sample. So let's go to the sample library, and I'm going to open up some drums here, and now I'm going to type in a little search. So I'm just going to search for a kit. And I've got a kit right here. So these are sounds that I could drag in. And any type of audio file, WAV, AIF, and MP3 can be brought in to any of these locations, any of these pads here. So let's say we got our kick sound here. So all I need to do is just simply click on this and then drag it to the pad that I want. And now I've got this. Now when I play that note, as you can see, it's going to play that, okay? Once I have kind of my starting point, so this I would consider like my starting point, that's my A key. You can obviously start anywhere you want if you're using your push instrument or a different keyboard controller or whatever. And I'm just, there we go. So now I've got this at the bottom. So I can either drag in an individual sample, or I can drag in multiple samples, and it will place them from the point you drag upward. So let me show you that. I'll just get rid of this kick right here. And I'll just highlight all of these and drag it right under that first note. And as you can see, it's highlighting all the notes above it. So by doing that, now you've got all your different pads. And they might not be in the place that you want them. So I mean, you could obviously drag individually or whatever, but this is just for an example. So this is great. We got a kit in here, and what we can do from here is if we create a MIDI clip, and all I'm doing here is just double clicking here in the session window. If I were in the arrangement window, I would just simply highlight a section. Let me get to over here some bars. Let's just do a 2-bar. I could just highlight and then hit Command-Shift-M, and that creates a MIDI part, as you can see here. If you're on a PC, you're going to hit Control-Shift-M, and that'll create that part. And then what I usually do is I hit Command L just to loop that section, right? If I'm in the arrangement window. But let's just go back over to the session window and work from there, just because it's a little easier. And I'm just going to make a 1-bar loop here. And what you can see here in the piano roll is all my sounds are all lined up and named. So whatever sound that I want to program in, I could simply double click to enter that note. So let's just say I wanted a 4 on the floor kick. I'm just putting those on the quarter notes, and as you can see down here, this is the resolution, right? So this is 16th note, which is a pretty good place to work with when you're creating drum parts, and then you can get more intricate if you want. So now that I've got these kicks, when I play it, you're going to hear. So that's cool. And then we will, let's say, just throw a snare on top of here. And we've got, I think we've got closed hi-hats. And if you turn this on right here, these little headphone icon, then when you hit the key, you can actually hear the sound. Or when you enter something in, you can hear the sound. So let's say that I'm not sure what sound I want right here. I can actually just hit the up arrow or down arrow key to move this around. So that's a good way to kind of scroll through and hear your sounds if you want. So I'll just put some close hi-hats every other note here. Just a very standard, basic, somewhat boring nothing really to it, right? And that's how you would be able to enter in your notes. Obviously, if you have a controller, then you can play your notes in as well. And the way you would approach that is pretty simple. So in our session window, since we've already laid down some basic things, we don't want to race over this. So we want to first make sure that we've armed our track, which you pretty much have to do if you want to even hear any sounds that you're playing, okay? Second thing that you want to do is this plus sign here. You want to turn that on, and that makes sure that you're not erasing over what you've already done. And then the third thing that you want to do is click right here, and then you can play a part in. So let me find I've got this little tom here. Let me actually erase what's already in here, and I'll just make a new part. So first thing I'll do is I'll just play along with it. Okay, so I know what I'm going to play, and then I will go and hit this little record icon and pop it in. And there we go. And if I want to, I can come in here and highlight those notes, right click, and I can set quantize settings. So let's just set this to 16th notes, and then I can put the amount of adjustment, so it doesn't have to be 100%, it can still be a little bit more human. So let's go with 70%. There we go, we're closer, but it's not dead on. So that's how you can draw in and record notes in just like any other synth. So back into this, another thing that we can do is we can add a synth. We don't just need to add samples. We're capable of adding like a synth sound. Now understand that this synth is only going to play one note. So I'll show you how to adjust that note that is being played. So you'll basically be able to play that like a sample. So let's come in here and we'll go to our operator instrument. Let me see if there's a cool sound to bring in. Let's just try that, okay? And we can drag this in just like we would a sample. And now we've got this instrument. So when I play here, it's hitting that particular note. So if I come over here to this little sample section here, this is going to show all of our samples. And if I have this clicked here, it will jump right to where the sample is, okay? And now what I can do is if I hit this I/O, I can actually set the note that is playing. Right now it's just playing C3, which is the default, but let's say I want a deeper note, I just drag this down. And let's say that's the note I want. There we go. So now, not only do I have samples, but I have also created a bass note. Now the next thing that I want to show you is layering. So there's a couple different ways that you can layer. See, these pads don't have to just represent one sound. They can represent a bunch of layered sounds. So if I come to my kick drum, which we have right here, we can actually drag another sample on top of this and create what's called a multi. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to try to find a different kick drum. So let's just go into my samples and I'll type in kick. Let's just take this as an example. So now if I click and drag and hold the command key, it will layer with the original. So now we've got, it's creating an instrument rack, which is kind of like a multi. So now this one pad has both these sounds. So when I play this, now I can adjust the volume of each separate sound. And of course I can adjust any of the parameters within the simpler instrument. And you can layer as many sounds as you want. You can layer a synth on top of this as well. And once you've kind of opened this up, the easy way to do it instead of just dragging on here is you could literally just drag a sound right into this instrument rack, and that will be added to the sound as well. So you can create some pretty complex layered sounds, you know, on one pad, which is a fantastic feature. The next thing I'm going to show you that is very cool, that wasn't possible before but is now, is you can drag loops onto the drum rack. And here, check this out. I'll go into here we go. So we just got some drum beats here. There we go. And I can drag this in. And what's great about this is it will play to whatever tempo I have it here. So let's just, I'm going to create a new clip here. And right here is our beat here. So I'm just going to drag this all the way across for one bar. That way it's just like the keys being held down. And then I'll go ahead and play. And what's great is now I can change the tempo. And this will follow along. That feature wasn't available before in Ableton 8 and Ableton 7. So this is a very cool new feature. You can drag in any loop, and as long as it's looped correctly, it will sync to whatever time that you have within the drum rack. So the next thing is oftentimes you want to maybe add an effect on a particular drum sound without affecting the rest. So if I were to go into my effects here and drag in, say, a reverb. This reverb I'm going to make it a little bit more dramatic so that you actually can really hear what's going on. This reverb is going to affect everything on this track. So we don't want that, right? We might want it just on a specific sound. So one way that we can approach this is to find, a particular sound that we want reverb on. So let's see what we've got here. Let's say maybe a snare sound, right? Okay, great. So if we find that snare sound, which is right here, we could just take that and drag it right in. Not on the outside, but right inside here. And now it's just on that snare and nothing else. So when we play this, everything else is clean. Oh, looks like I haven't got anything on the snare, so let's add something to that. So snare 2 is right here, and we'll just pop that there and there. So just that one sound. Now another great way to do that, if you are in the session window, which we are here, and it's even easier, is this little triangle here allows us to open up, and it will show all the samples that we have as separate tracks. So we can here affect the panning, the volume, and we can, of course, if we double click here, we can drag in any effects just like we would with any other track. So we can feel free to compress, EQ, add delay to a certain sound or what have you, all from inside here. And then once we're happy with what we got, we can close this up to keep things nice and tidy and simple. You can also add return and send effects by clicking right down here. And as you can see, you can drop an effect in here, and this becomes like a return effect. So let's just go ahead and add a reverb. So now this reverb is A. This is our send A, okay? So now we can turn on the send, and it now shows us a lane where this reverb can be added. So on any sound that we have going, we can now add a specific amount of reverb to it. So let's go back to the snare. We'll delete this. What I might want to do, this default might need to be turned up. I'm going to turn this up 100% since it's a send. And let's drop a utility in there as well, just to make sure that we get a decent amount of volume. So I'm going to add like 5 dB. And then we can come back to our sounds. Okay, so we've now got something on that snare. And maybe I want something on this closed hi-hat. And that can work with as many effects as you want. So you can drop in compressors and delays and whatever, and just whatever sound that you want to affect, you can go ahead and add that. Just make sure that when you add the effect that you turn the wet dry up to 100%. So let's go ahead and close this here. And lastly, like many other instrument racks, you can open this up and you can assign different things to macros. And what's kind of cool about this is that you can affect everything at the same time if you want to. So if you want to adjust, let's say, let me just take a look at some of the controls here. So all we need to do is right click on volume. What we first want to do is let's map this over to macro 1, okay? And then what we're going to do, not copy to siblings, what we're going to actually do is map to all siblings. And now if we come over here, each of our sounds is mapped. So now we can control the volume of each over here. We can still affect individual volumes over here. So this is just going to give an overall raise and lowering of the volume. so. So those are some of the basics of the drum rack instrument.